My name is Abigail, and my age 22 years. I thought the nightmare was finally over. For months, I had been living in what felt like some kind of sitcom from hell, except there was nothing funny about it. My roommate's girlfriend had basically moved in without paying a single dime. She wasn't on the lease. She didn't contribute to groceries. She didn't help with cleaning, nothing. She just existed here. And not in a quiet, harmless way, no. She existed loudly. She left her shoes scattered across the hallway, her makeup on the bathroom counter, her coffee cups half finished and growing mold on the kitchen table. She treated the apartment like some all-inclusive resort where I was the staff. But then, yesterday, she was gone. I'm still not sure exactly why. Maybe it was because the landlord finally stepped in after my complaint, giving my roommate an ultimatum: either she got on the lease and paid rent, or she stopped staying over so much. Maybe it was because she didn't want the commitment. Maybe she just got bored of the situation. Honestly, I didn't care. All I knew was that I woke up that morning, and she wasn't there. No pile of laundry blocking the bathroom door. No coffee mug teetering on the edge of the counter. No sound of her fake laughing at TikToks at 7 o'clock a.m. on speaker. When the door closed behind her for what I assumed was the last time, I swear, I felt lighter. Like the apartment itself took a deep breath. It was the kind of relief you don't even realize you've been craving until you feel it. My shoulders unclenched. My stomach, which had been in a constant state of irritation, settled. For the first time in months, I could picture a future where my home actually felt like a home again. Quiet mornings, a clean kitchen, a fridge that still had food in it when I got home from work. The dream was simple, but it felt so out of reach. Until now, I even grabbed my phone and texted my best friend, "It's over. Things are going back to normal." I didn't realize at the time how dangerously optimistic that text was. Because here's the thing: when you've been living in chaos for so long, you forget that sometimes the calm isn't really calm. Sometimes it's just the quiet before the storm. That first day without her felt almost surreal. I came home from work, expecting to be greeted by the usual signs of destruction, but instead, the living room looked decent. The cushions weren't on the floor. There were random crumbs on the couch. The smell of burnt toast wasn't lingering in the air. I walked into the kitchen and saw the countertops, actual, visible countertops, not covered in dirty dishes or crusted over pans from breakfast for dinner experiments gone wrong. I opened the fridge out of habit, bracing myself for disappointment, and almost laughed out loud. My yogurt was still there. My carton of eggs hadn't mysteriously vanished. Even my half bottle of orange juice, which usually had a tendency to disappear overnight, wasn't touched. It was like some kind of domestic miracle. That night, I made dinner in peace. I played music while I cooked, without having to compete with a reality TV show blasting from the living room. I actually enjoyed washing my own dishes, because they were mine, and I knew they'd still be in the same place the next morning. When I went to bed, I felt this deep sense of satisfaction, like maybe, just maybe, the apartment I signed the lease for was finally back. The next morning was even better. I woke up to silence, not the muffled sound of whispered arguments between my roommate and his girlfriend, not the clatter of her searching through cabinets for a snack at 3 a.m. Just silence. I got ready without having to step over her shoes. I used the bathroom without waiting for her to finish her 45-minute skincare routine. I made coffee without worrying she'd appear and just borrow some, which always meant taking half the pot. For the first time in forever, I felt like I could breathe in my own home. I even allowed myself to imagine what life might be like going forward. Maybe my roommate and I could get back to a normal, civil living situation. Maybe I could actually invite friends over without worrying about running into her. Maybe this was the turning point. I didn't realize then that my hopeful little daydream was about to get stomped on like a bug. Looking back, I think that's why the next part hit so hard. I'd spent so long tolerating the chaos she brought into my life that the moment she left, My brain convinced me I'd reached the finish line, like I had won, like the war was over. But the truth, all I'd done was change the enemy. I didn't know it yet. But my roommate wasn't about to forgive and forget. He wasn't about to let me enjoy the peace I'd fought for. No, he was going to make sure I paid for getting rid of his girlfriend, whether I actually forced her out or not. And the petty little signs of war, they were coming. At that moment, though, I was blissfully unaware. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through my phone, and smiling like an idiot, thinking I'd finally gotten my apartment back. Little did I know, within 24 hours, I'd be longing for the days when the girlfriend was the problem. Because as bad as she was, my roommate was about to prove he could be worse. By the very next day, I realized something important. If my roommate's girlfriend wasn't going to be around to make my life miserable, then he had decided to take over the job himself. It wasn't subtle. Either. It was deliberate. Calculated. And the first shot he fired, the trash, I had taken it out the night before. So when I left for work that morning, the bin in the kitchen was completely empty. No smells, no clutter, just a fresh, clean start to the day. When I came home from work, I could smell it before I even saw it. That faint, sour odor that tells you someone didn't just toss a napkin in there. No, they fed the trash. I walked into the kitchen and froze. The bin was full again. But here's the thing, he hadn't bothered to take it out. Worse, my tied-up bag of trash from the night before was still sitting neatly by the door, ready to be carried down to the dumpster. And instead of just adding his own bag, or God forbid taking mine down too, he had opened it, shoved his own leftover food scraps on top, and then just left it there. Chicken bones, soggy noodles, some weird sauce that had started leaking through the bag. It was like he wanted the smell to smack me in the face the moment I walked through the door. And you know what? It worked. I didn't even say anything at first. I just tied it up tighter, took the whole mess outside, and told myself, okay, maybe he just wasn't thinking. But deep down, I knew this wasn't carelessness. This was intentional. The second shot came a couple nights later when the Wi-Fi mysteriously died. It was around 9 p.m. And I was in the middle of watching something on my laptop when the connection suddenly dropped. No big deal, I thought. Probably an outage. I restarted my laptop, reset the router. Nothing. After 20 frustrating minutes, I walked down the hall to his room and knocked on the door. He opened it halfway, leaning against the frame like he was already bored with the conversation. Hey, I said, is the Wi-Fi down for you, too? He smiled just barely and said, oh, no, it's working fine for me. That's when it clicked. I asked, did you change the password? He shrugged. Oh, yeah, forgot to tell you. No apology. No, let me text it to you. Just that flat tone that made it crystal clear. This wasn't forgetfulness. I stared at him for a moment, then asked for the password. He gave it to me like he was doing me some huge favor. And the whole time, he never broke eye contact, like he wanted me to know he had control. The third shot, the one that told me this was going to get a whole lot worse, happened at the end of the week. I came home late one evening, exhausted from work, dreaming about making a quick dinner and collapsing into bed. But the second I opened my bedroom door, I froze. In the middle of my room, stacked like some bizarre art installation, was every single pot, pan, and utensil I owned. My frying pans, my saucepans, my spatulas, my cutting boards, all piled high in a lopsided tower. I stood there for a moment, completely baffled, before storming into the living room. He was on the couch, scrolling on his phone like nothing was wrong. What the hell is all my cookware doing in my room? I demanded. He looked up, and I'll never forget the smirk on his face when he said, since you don't like sharing, I figure I'd help you keep your stuff separate. That was it. No explanation. No attempt to play it off as a joke, just pure weaponized pettiness. Here's the thing, people think big arguments are what make roommates unbearable. The screaming matches, the slam doors, the epic fights. But honestly, It's the small things. It's the deliberate little inconveniences, the things they do knowing it'll get under your skin. The constant reminder that you're not at peace in your own home, and he was good at it, too good. He didn't touch my stuff in a way that would get him in legal trouble. He just moved it. He didn't actually cut off my internet. He just made sure I had to ask for it. He didn't dump his trash directly on my floor. He just made sure his garbage contaminated mine, so I'd have to deal with it. Every move he made sent the same message. You messed with my life, so I'm going to mess with yours. The worst part, this was just the first week. I could already feel myself tensing up every time I unlocked the front door, wondering what new petty stunt I was about to walk into. Was my food going to be missing from the fridge? Was the thermostat going to be cranked up to sauna levels? Was he going to move furniture around just to screw with me? It was like living in a never-ending game of psychological chess, except I didn't sign up to play. By the time the cookware incident happened, I realized something important. The girlfriend might have been messy, entitled, and inconsiderate, but at least she didn't go out of her way to strategically make my life harder. My roommate, he was intentional. Every action was a move on his board, and the way he was playing, it was clear this wasn't just about making me uncomfortable. This was about sending a warning. If you try to control my life, I'll make yours hell. It was petty, it was childish, and it was clearly just the beginning. The days that followed felt less like living in an apartment and more like being drafted into an unspoken, passive-aggressive war. There were no direct confrontations, no shouting matches in the kitchen. Instead, every day came with a new, silent move from one of us, a constant back and forth of petty jabs that turned our home into a battleground. It started with the groceries. After the cookware incident, I realized I couldn't leave my food in the kitchen anymore. I'd come home from work and find things missing, sometimes entire meals I had prepped, other times just random bites taken out, like someone had taste tested them and then tossed the rest back in the fridge. So I began keeping everything in my room, and I mean everything. Cereal boxes stacked next to my desk, a mini cooler tucked under my bed for milk and fruit. Even my coffee and tea lived on a shelf by my window. It felt ridiculous, like I was a teenager hiding snacks from a sibling, but it was the only way to make sure I actually got to eat my own food. Of course, he noticed, and his response, dirty dishes. Suddenly, the sink was always full, not just with a couple of cups. No, we're talking towers of plates, greasy pans, and utensils crusted over with dried sauce. Sometimes they'd sit there for 3 or 4 days, attracting fruit flies and making the entire kitchen smell like a science experiment gone wrong. It wasn't that he had always been neat before, but now it was like he had made it his mission to make the kitchen as unusable as possible for me. The social interactions or lack thereof were just as pointed. Before, we'd at least exchange basic pleasantries. A hey when passing in the hallway, a later when one of us was leaving. But after the girlfriend left, those greetings disappeared. I stopped saying hi when I came in. He started slamming his bedroom door every single time he walked past me in the hallway. Not just closing it, slamming it. That sharp, hollow bang that made the walls vibrate. It became this weird, juvenile game of avoidance. If he was in the living room, I'd stay in my room until I heard him leave. If I was cooking, he'd walk through without a word, but somehow managed to brush against me just enough to make it clear I was in his space. The real escalation came with the thermostat. One evening, I was sitting at my desk when I started to notice the air felt heavy, like I was slowly baking in my own skin. I checked the thermostat, and my eyes nearly popped out of my head. 85 degrees. It felt like a greenhouse in the middle of summer. I immediately turned it back down to a normal temperature and went back to my room. An hour later, I stepped out to grab a drink of water, and there it was again. 80-5. I turned it down a second time. 30 minutes later, back at 85. By the third round, I was sweating so much it felt like I'd just run a marathon in a sauna. I finally unplugged the thermostat entirely, just to put an end to it. His response: loud music. Not just regular someone's enjoying their playlist loud. No weaponized decibels. At 2 a.m., my walls started vibrating from bass-heavy EDM tracks. The kind of music that doesn't just play in the background, but takes over your body. My pillow thudded with every beat. My bed frame rattled. I marched out to ask him to turn it down. But of course, he had his door locked and the music blasting. I ended up sleeping with noise-canceling headphones, which still didn't block it entirely. The pettiness was exhausting, but here's the thing. I wasn't going to back down. Part of me wanted to rise above it, to just be the bigger person and ignore him until he got bored. But another part of me, the part that had been walkover for months, while his girlfriend basically lived here rent-free, wasn't ready to roll over and let him win. So I started fighting back in my own ways. If he left dishes in the sink for days, I'd take pictures and text them to the landlord. If he cranked the thermostat, I'd reset it and leave a sticky note saying stop wasting electricity, it's in the lease. If he slammed his door, I'd wait until he was asleep and run the vacuum cleaner right outside his room. Petty, sure, but when you're stuck in the same apartment as your enemy, sometimes petty is all you've got. The weirdest part was how fast it all became normal. I'd wake up and immediately check the thermostat, like someone checks the weather. I'd open my door slowly, listening for music before stepping into the hallway. I'd peek into the kitchen like I was inspecting a crime scene, mentally calculating whether I could use the stove without having to scrub one of his abandoned pans first. It was ridiculous to grown adults turning an apartment into a war zone over grudges and bruised egos. But here's what I knew. This wasn't just about dishes, or food, or the thermostat. This was about control. He wanted me to regret ever saying anything about his girlfriend. He wanted me to wish I had just stayed quiet and let things be. And in his mind, every little inconvenience was proof that he can make my life harder than I had ever made his. The thing is, I wasn't the same person I was when all this started. A few months ago, I might have just let it slide. I might have retreated, kept my head down, and avoided conflict at all costs. But now, I was ready to push back. And deep down, I knew this petty back and forth wasn't sustainable. One of us was going to break. One of us was going to cross the line from inconvenient to unacceptable. And when that happened, things were going to get ugly. I thought the petty games were bad enough. The thermostat battles, the trash sabotage, the midnight noise, it was all childish, sure, but it was still within the bounds of annoying roommate behavior. But then, he took it too far. It was a Thursday evening. I remember because I just finished a brutal day at work, the kind where all you want is to come home, change into something comfortable, and collapse into bed with takeout. I was already mentally checked out as I walked up the stairs to our apartment. I unlocked the door and immediately felt something was off. Not in a the place was trashed way, but in a quiet, unsettling way. The hallway was too still, the living room was empty, but the TV was on, playing something low in the background. There was this faint, still smell like someone had been moving things around. I walked toward my room, already fishing my phone out of my pocket. But the second I reached my door, my stomach dropped. It was open. Why open? Here's the thing, I never leave my bedroom door open when I'm not home. Not even cracked. It's just a habit. My room is my safe space, my boundary. So seeing it open like that instantly made my pulse jump. I stepped inside and looked around. At first glance, nothing looked stolen. My laptop was still on my desk. My books were still stacked on the shelf. But something still felt wrong. Then I noticed what was missing. My laundry basket. It sounds small, but it was strange. Why would anyone take that? I'd just done laundry the night before. Everything in there was clean, neatly folded, smelling fresh from the dryer. Asterisk, I searched my room again just to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. But it was definitely gone. Asterisk, that's when I spotted it sitting in the middle of the living room floor. Asterisk, or rather, dumped in the middle of the living room floor. Asterisk, the basket was upside down, and my clean clothes were scattered everywhere. Shirts, jeans, socks strewn across the carpet like someone had flipped it over in one quick, deliberate motion. Asterisk, asterisk, my first reaction wasn't even anger, it was disbelief. Asterisk, I just stood there, staring at the mess, my brain trying to catch up to what I was seeing. Asterisk, then it hit me. Asterisk, this wasn't just another petty inconvenience. This wasn't turning the thermostat up or stacking pans in my room. This was crossing into full-on harassment. Asterisk, he had gone into my bedroom. Asterisk, he had touched my clothes. Asterisk, and he had made sure I knew it. Asterisk, asterisk, I stormed over to the couch where he was sitting, casually leaning back with his phone in hand, as if he hadn't just completely violated my space. Asterisk, what's your problem? I snapped. Asterisk, he didn't even flinch. He leaned back further, crossing his arms like he was settling in for a show. Then he gave me this smug little half smile and said, asterisk, you made my girlfriend feel unwelcome. You don't get to play victim now. Asterisk, that was it. No apology, no denial. Just a statement that made it clear this was revenge. Asterisk, asterisk, I felt the heat rise to my face. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from pure anger. Asterisk, I shot back. She wasn't on the lease. She didn't pay rent, and it's not my job to feed her or clean up after her. Asterisk, he rolled his eyes like I was being ridiculous. Then, with the most dismissive tone I've ever heard, he said, asterisk, you could have just let it go. Asterisk, asterisk, that line stuck with me. Asterisk, you could have just let it go. Asterisk, translation, you should have just let us use you. You should have kept your mouth shut and kept paying for things you didn't agree to. Asterisk, in that moment, I realized two things. Asterisk, one, he didn't see himself as the bad guy. In his mind, I had attacked his girlfriend, so now he was defending her by making my life hell. Asterisk, two, this wasn't going to stop on its own. Asterisk, I could clean my room, lock my door, hide my stuff, but if he was willing to go this far, what was next? Would he throw my things away? Would he start messing with my work laptop? Would I come home one day to find my mattress in the hallway? Asterisk, asterisk, I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab my laundry basket and throw it at him. I wanted to pack up my things and leave right then. Asterisk, but I didn't. Asterisk, because that would have been letting him win. Asterisk, instead, I picked up my clothes, one piece at a time, without saying another word. I could feel his eyes on me the whole time, like he was waiting for me to break, waiting for me to yell, or cry, or do something that proved he'd gotten under my skin. Asterisk, but I stayed quiet. Asterisk, when I had everything back in the basket, I carried it to my room, shut the door, and locked it. Then I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands still shaking, and made myself a promise. Asterisk, this wasn't going to stop unless I made it stop. Asterisk, asterisk, that night, I didn't sleep much. Every creak in the hallway made me sit up. Every sound from the living room made my heart race. Asterisk, it's one thing to live with someone who's messy or inconsiderate. It's another thing entirely to live with someone who's willing to violate your personal space to send a message. Asterisk, this was no longer just about roommate drama. This was about feeling safe in my own home. Asterisk, and the truth. Asterisk, ID in single quotes T. Asterisk, not anymore. Asterisk, asterisk, by the next morning, I had a plan forming in my head. Asterisk, because of he thought I was just going to keep playing his little game. He was wrong, very wrong. The next morning, I woke up with that lingering tightness in my chest, the kind that comes from knowing you've got a storm brewing in your own living room. My first thought wasn't coffee. It wasn't breakfast. It was, I have to do something. The image of my clothes scattered across the floor replayed in my mind like a loop. It wasn't just the mess, it was the smug look on his face while I stood there holding my laundry. That memory had sharpened into a single, unshakable thought. This ends now. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and tapped my landlord's number. It rang twice before she answered. Her voice had the half-awake, half-busy tone that told me she'd been juggling calls all morning. "Hello, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "We spoke last week about the roommate issue." She hesitated, probably remembering my last call. "Yes. Is there another problem?" I let out a humorless laugh. "Another problem? Try 4. And then I laid it all out. I told her about the garbage, how he deliberately left it piled high so it would stink up the kitchen. About the Wi-Fi stunt, how he changed the password and held it hostage like we were in some twisted sitcom. I described the cookware pile in my room, the pots and pans stacked like some absurd art installation. And finally, I told her about last night. The laundry basket. My open bedroom door, the clothes dumped in the living room like a trophy. I didn't hold back on the details. And this time, I had proof. "Hold on," I said, switching my phone to speaker and pulling up my photos. "I'm sending you pictures right now, one by one." I sent them over. The mess in the kitchen, the pile of pants in my bedroom, the upside-down laundry basket with my clothes splayed across the carpet. On the other end, she went quiet for a moment. I could hear the faint click of a mouse probably opening the files. Then she let out a long sigh, the kind that's equal parts frustration and fatigue. "This is not acceptable," she finally said. "If this keeps up, we'll have to have a formal meeting. You're both on the lease, so I can't just kick him out. But there are limits to this kind of behavior." That word limits hung in the air like a challenge. Good. Because my patience had already hit its limit days ago. After we hung up, I sat there for a minute, phone still in my hand, thinking about what she'd said. A formal meeting, the phrase, didn't exactly inspire confidence. I could picture it now, me sitting in the landlord's cramped office, my roommate across the table, pretending to be the picture of innocence. He'd probably smirk the whole time, playing it off as misunderstandings or petty roommate stuff. I couldn't let it get to that point without something stronger than my word against his. That's when I decided I was going to document everything, every dirty dish left on purpose, every time the Wi-Fi went down mysteriously, every sound, every mess, every invasion of my space. I pulled out a notebook from my desk drawer and wrote the first entry. Date, Thursday, 8:42 p.m. Incident, laundry basket taken from bedroom, clothes dumped in living room, door left open. Evidence, photos sent to landlord. I underlined evidence twice. Then I added a second layer to my plan. Video. I went online, found a small, motion-activated camera, and ordered it with next day shipping. It wasn't paranoia, it was insurance. If he so much as stepped foot into my room again, I'd have it on record. For the common areas, my phone would do just fine. If I came home to find a mess, I'd film it. If he tried to pick a fight, I'd hit record. I wasn't looking for confrontation, I was building a case. Because here's the thing about people like him. They're bold when they think no one's watching. But the second they know the spotlight's on them, they slip up. Over the next few hours, I replayed every interaction we'd had in my head. The way he looked at me when I first said his girlfriend needed to chip in for groceries. The way his voice got just a little too casual whenever he explained away his behavior, like he was enjoying my frustration. The way he seemed to always have just enough time to make trouble before I came home. It wasn't random, none of it. This was calculated. And that thought alone was enough to make me double down. I started setting small traps not for him to fall into, but for me to catch him in. I left my bedroom door closed, but unlocked, the camera armed and ready. I took before photos of the kitchen before leaving for work. I even made a note of the thermostat setting every time I left the apartment. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about control. Taking it back, inch by inch. By evening, I could feel my own mindset shifting. Yesterday, I'd felt violated. Today, I felt prepared Because here's the thing about toxic people, they thrive when you react in the moment. They want you flustered, emotional, too busy feeling wrong to think strategically. But once you stop reacting and start calculating, the game changes. And I wasn't just changing the game, I was rewriting the rules. Still, I'm not going to lie to you. There was this gut feeling I couldn't shake. That whisper in the back of my mind that said, you haven't seen the worst of it yet. Because if he'd already crossed into going through my things, what was the next step for him? Messing with my food, sabotaging my work, something worse. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I've got a feeling this situation is about to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. And when it does, I'll be ready.